I'm Hannah Sampson and I cover tourism for the Miami Herald. There has been a pretty significant increase in demand for travel to Cuba. Travel companies that book those trips say they're seeing between 200 and 300% more interest, and that is translating to, for some companies, 3 times as many bookings as they had at the same time a year ago. Historically, the companies that have been arranging travel to Cuba have had licenses from the U.S. government, and it's a very long, laborious process to get those licenses. So the number has been limited, but that all has changed with the January regulations that were released. Since January especially, there has been stepped up interest from all different kinds of travel providers to get Americans to Cuba. So that includes a Canadian cruise line that is now booking Americans on their itineraries to Cuba. That includes a website called cheapair.com, where you can now book from anywhere in the United States to go through to Cuba with a stopover in Mexico. And kayak.com, which is a pretty well-known travel provider, is now including hotels in Cuba. So Americans who are interested can check it out and see what's available. The people who can go to Cuba now are the same people who could go to Cuba before. It's just a lot easier for them to book the trip. So there's 12 categories of acceptable types of travel. The most common one is called people to people, and that's a trip where you will have a very structured, maybe week of activities. You'll meet with people on the ground in Cuba. You'll have a guide who will take you around. You're not going to have any free time to go hang out at the beach, and you still won't have a lot of free time to go hang out at the beach. That's not allowed at this point. It is not a cheap trip. Thousands of dollars, depending on what your itinerary is and where you're staying. But, you know, a week in the Bahamas is going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than a week in Cuba. Travel companies in the past had to go through a very laborious process of getting their certification from the U.S. government. They don't have to do that anymore. Instead, now they just tell people who are traveling to Cuba, here are your 12 accepted categories. Certify which one you're going under, but certify sounds like very official. It really just involves checking off a box. In the shorter term, everybody's kind of waiting for the credit card infrastructure, ATM card infrastructure to work so that Americans who are now allowed by the US government to use their debit and credit cards do so. For now, travel companies are saying still you need to bring cash because that's the best way you're going to be able to spend your money. But in the near term, credit cards should be able to be accepted there.